So now we can take a look at some other options that we have to deal with errors in Flux or mono objects. And for that I created a simple playground package with a test class where we use the following setup. We create a countdown ledge, and that countdown ledge has a method called await, and calling await blocks the current thread until the countdown reached 0. I initialize the countdown ledge with a count of 1, and then I create a flux that when it terminates, it doesn't matter if that's successful or unsuccessful, it calls ledge countdown. That way I have a general setup for my test class that ensures that the unit test waits until the flux has terminated. This flux is just a range of integers from 0 to 10. However, with the doOnNext method here, I intercept every event, and if the integer has the value of 4, I just throw a runtime exception. So this flux never reaches the end, it terminates after item number 4. After each test, I run this ledge await, so that makes sure that my test doesn't stop too early. Now with that general setup, I can use a few simple calls. Here I'm just subscribing, and I use 2 parameters. One of them is the error consumer and the other one is the success consumer. In both cases, I simply print the value that is received. When I run this test, then we get the items 0, 1, 2, 3, and then the error consumer prints the runtime exception. As you can see, the other items are not emitted. So the flux just terminates and the other items are never used. An alternative option is mapping that error to a new flux. So basically that's like a try-catch block in synchronous code where we continue with an alternative flow in the catch section. For that we call onErrorResume and provide the flux that should be used as a replacement. And now we get 0, 1, 2, 3, and afterwards that new flux is used and it continues from there. We could also use a fallback value and then just stop emitting. So instead of having an exception, we get a default value and then the sequence stops. Here we see the output 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 400, which is our fallback value that we provided in onErrorReturn. We could also opt to ignore the error and continue. That's what we did in our bike simulation. Here we get the throwable and the original value, and we simply print a message here, and apart from that the flux will continue with the other items. So the output is 0, 1, 2, 3, and then we have that error that's printed by this part here, and then it continues with the other items. And the last example that I have here is retrying with the retry operation. I also print the message subscribed as soon as a subscription is added to that flux. So we can see that because of that retry, we are actually subscribing twice. So basically the flux is executed twice. And then I print the success values and an exception if one occurs. The result looks like this. We have the first subscription, which prints items 0 to 3. Then an exception is caught. So we subscribe a second time and start over again. However, the exception occurs again, so we stop with that exception. Keep that in mind when using the retry method, because it does not retry the last thing that failed, it retries the entire sequence. That's pretty important. Okay, so these are a few examples for error handling in a Flux. I hope you found that useful.